Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boy.
With President Biden pardons his son, guys. I don't know if y'all been paying attention to what's been going on for the past 4 years, but there has been a lot of political prosecution going on out here. A lot of political prosecution going on between Trump, and then instead of going for Biden, they decided to go for his son instead. And along the way of this whole thing for the past 4 years, they've continued to ask President Biden, yo, President Biden, are you going to pardon your son? And every time he would say, no, I'm not going to pardon my son. I believe in the justice system and they'll do the right thing. They'll do their job. I have a feeling why I feel like he did all of those things, why he continued to say that he wasn't going to pardon his son along the way. However, like I said, he continued to say those things for years, and now it's come to the end of his presidency, and he has some things to, he had one thing that he needed to do for sure, and that was he's going to pardon his son. I think the whole world, everyone in America, would do the same thing. However, he lied about it. He did lie about it. He spent all that time saying he wasn't going to do it, saying he believes in the system, to at the very end decide, I'm going to pardon my son. He did say something about that, so let's go ahead and look at what he said about it. He just said, I'm going to just read this quote before we get into another video. No reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out only because he is my son. Yes, it was political prosecution, of course. And that is wrong. Yes, it was political prosecution, of course. Biden said in his statement, there has been an effort to break Hunter, who has been 5.5 years sober, even in the face of unrelenting attacks and selective prosecution. In trying to break Hunter, they've tried to break me, and there's no reason to believe it will stop here. Enough is enough. Hey, Biden, I feel you on this, my man. I feel you on this. Enough is enough when it comes to this political prosecution, because that's what they've been doing across the board on both sides. Hunter was just the end of, Hunter just got the bad end of this stick. However, now we can have another conversation, because if Hunter got the bad end of this stick, who do y'all think got the other end of this stick? Because, hey, let's be real. Somebody else has been screaming, this is political prosecution. I think y'all know where this is going. Hunter isn't the only one. President Trump has also got the bad end of the stick on this. So it leads for us to ask the question, are you going to wipe the slate clean and just say that this political prosecution on both ends was wrong? You said it. You said it was wrong on one side, but when are we going to admit that there was some political prosecution going on your end of the stick as well? Like I said again, guys, any father, any reasonable person would have expected President Biden to pardon his son. Any reasonable person. The only problem is that you stood there and lied. I don't know what the other woman's name is that you had standing on the podium all the time as well. You now have her on that podium multiple times saying President Biden will not pardon his son. This is some craziness. This is some craziness. I think he deserves an apology to that lady, and he also needs to do another pardon when it comes down to this, just to wipe the whole slate clean. With that being said, I do want to. Stephen A. Smith had said something about this as well, so I want to hear his thoughts on this whole situation that was going on. Let's get it.
You know, the Biden situation disgusted me in terms of the parting only from this standpoint, Chris. Nobody on the planet, you want to be a cynic and you want to act like you would be offended by something like that. If you're one of those people out there, fine. But no one within reason would have a problem with him saying, it's my son. I love him. There's no way I'm sending him to jail. And I have the power to avoid it. Nobody would blame him for that. But that's not where he went. So I didn't have a problem to answer your question directly with the decision that he made to pardon his son. Boo Boo the Fool knew he was going to do that. I don't care who he stood in front of or sat in front of and said that he wasn't going to pardon his son and he was just going to go by the letter of the law. Please, everybody and their grandmother knew he was going to pardon his son. But to come out and to start talking about how it's been a witch hunt and the Department of Justice and others were after him or whoever it was, and, GOP rather was after him. Well, wait a minute. What have y'all been doing with Donald Trump all of these years? Now, you can make
Now, let me put that in. What have y'all been doing with Donald Trump all these years? Some things may have been warranted. Yes, some of them. But let's be real. Political prosecution was at its highest during this time. Witch hunts and all. That's what a lot of it. Other of it is definitely witch hunt.
Argument about the legitimacy of the cases against Donald Trump compared to what wasn't legitimate, etc. That's not the point. The point is it was clearly politicized. You had folks on the left who were hell-bent on going after Donald Trump because they were determined to make sure that he couldn't run for re-election or that these elements would get in the way of him possibly winning re-election. And now we know why more than ever, because they weren't confident they would ever be able to beat him. He'd been a Republican nominee since 2016. He beat Hillary Clinton with the Electoral College vote. He wouldn't concede defeat in 2020, but he did receive over 74 million votes at that particular moment in time. And then you fast forward 4 years later, despite the 34 felony convictions, the 2 impeachments, the bevy of crimes that he had been accused of, the Republican voters out there, the conservative voters out there, and a lot of independents from various communities said, he's the guy we want. And I've said it on many, many occasions. It wasn't about him. Just like it wasn't about Biden in 2020, it was more against Trump. In this particular instance, it was an indictment against the Biden administration, what had been going on for the last 4 years. Some of the things going on with the border, obviously inflation, of course, crime in the streets, of course, woke and cancel culture and all of that, it all played a role. And so for him to come out and to talk about that this was a witch hunt when clearly it could be argued that's exactly what you were doing to Donald Trump, or you assisted in doing, seems beyond hypocritical. And that was what disgusted me. It wasn't his decision. It wasn't him pardoning his son. It was the weak, pathetic explanation that he gave, which has most critics just shaking their heads and raising their eyebrows and saying, what nerve you have.
Now, I agree with you 100%. I went light on that point in my open because I knew you were going to make it. I agree with you 100%. And he didn't have to do it that way. He could have just said what you said, which is, hey, look, I don't want them. He's my son, and they're going to go after him. And if I can protect him, I'm going to protect him. You know what else Biden should do? And I know people are going to get upset about this, but just think about it before you go crazy on me. Not you, everybody else. If I were he, I would pardon Trump. I
You
would
know
pardon
something?
Trump.
Honestly,
I would say this
as
has got to
crazy as this
stop.
sounds, Chris,
I'd pardon.
that's exactly what I would do. That's exactly what I would do. Enough's enough. You know what? You're the
Enough.
Democrats. You lost the election. You got your butt whipped. You couldn't prevent him from going back to the White House. More than a dozen cases have been dropped against him. The cases that have been ruled against him, he's going to appeal, and he'll probably get off from having to deal with all of that. It's time to move forward. You want to get at Trump? Sit back and judge what he does. Guess what? You got a midterm election in 2 years. Are you going to be ready if you're the Democratic Party? You should be. He's going to be the presidency for 4 years. You're going to be able to judge every single act that he does. March forward, move forward. Gerald Ford could have let Nixon suffer. To say he didn't let that happen. Why? Because it was for the good of the country. The whole hanging Chads issue in 2000 between George W. Bush and Al Gore. Gore could have dragged it on. He didn't. It was for the better of the country. And a lot of times these folks speak about this stuff, but they don't do what they say they're going to do and what they implore others to do, which is where the disgust elevates exponentially for Washington, D.C., because we know they're full of it most of the time. And today was the latest example of that.
Hey, thanks for watching.
Hey, Stephen A. hit that right on the head. Full of it. Full of it. Nobody in their right mind would expect a father not to pardon their son, guys. I don't even know why you would even come out and say half the things. No, I'm not going to pardon my son. I believe in the justice. I'm going to look as soon as it's happening. I'm going to say, y'all can try to do whatever you want to. My son's not going to jail for this. And then I would have said, this is a witch hunt. Then I would have, they coming at him for no reason. But I would have came off the jump telling folks, heck no. Heck no. I feel like he was only saying that because if he would have said it was a witch hunt then for his son, people would have been saying, well, y'all are witch hunting Trump as well. So instead of doing this before the election, he decided, okay, I'll do it after. I think this was the Democratic plan anyway, because they, let's be real. If I'm the president, I'm pardoning my son. He knew he was going to pardon his son the whole time. But let's let Trump get through some of these indictments and go through some trials and all this stuff before election. And then on the back end, I'll pardon my son. That way people aren't saying witch hunt and all this stuff before the election. We let Trump go through the whole thing that he gonna go through before election. That way it'll kind of damper him. But as y'all see, it didn't work. It didn't work. Trump still, come January, he'll be up in that White House. He won with a Whopper burger across the face. That's how much he done won. But yeah, it didn't work. So now it's like, hey, are we gonna set this thing fair across the board? Are you gonna scrape this thing fair across the board? I don't even think he has to come out anymore and say too much more about it. Other than you owe that lady an apology. You owe her an apology because you totally just made her stand up there and lie for 4 years straight. Lie out the side of her mouth. You owe her an apology. Anybody who kept saying that you weren't going to owe them an apology. And then I think you just need to go on and pardon Trump and say, let's put an end to this whole thing, because on both sides, it got a little far. Some of it might have been true. Some of it might be false. We're done. We're done. We're going to bury the hatchet, move on. And like Stephen A. said, now we're going to judge Trump for what he does while he's president. Now we'll judge him for that, because obviously he's already won. This is his last time. Let's move on to this next round that we're going to have to focus on. Until then, wipe the slate clean. We ain't even got to worry about this stuff no more. Don't feed into this. Let's go on and end this stuff, because all it did was lead to some entertainment, and we still lost. So let's go ahead and move on. Hey man, y'all let me know how y'all feel about that whole situation. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know how y'all feel now. Come on now, because I think, again, who wouldn't pardon their son?